Ravinia Festival is the oldest music festival in North America.
The beginnings of Ravinia was as an amusement park, not a music festival. A place with a calliope and vaudeville and restaurants and a baseball diamond and electric water fountains and several train lines, all meant to lure people up from Chicago to buy property up here. What I found when I got to Ravinia was, why not reclaim those origins and just update that for the 21st century? And so we've been doing that, which has made the place a little bit more vibrant, but it has also given us huge opportunity to draw in audiences of all types and diversity and all age groups.
I love it.
Every season here at Ravinia, we have about 140 different presentations on our main stage and on a couple of the other venues, which makes it really special.
This is my church. This is where I go to ask questions and to find healing and to find common ground.
I love walking around the grounds when people are watching other concerts and seeing their intensity, intense listening, intense back and forth between the artists, even if they're at the very, very back of the lawn. There's something very personal here. It feels like it's our essence and our core as artists is just in the trees.
I think the best part about Ravinia is the sense of community. It starts in the audience. People come to the pavilion or to sit on the lawn, and they set up these gorgeous tables. It looks like Thanksgiving on the lawn with candelabras. You can't believe the lengths to which people go. I think it's because Ravinia really stands as this pillar in the community where music matters.
Here we go, let's run the piece. Ravinia is my happy place. Ravinia is a place that not only do I have great memories of hearing wonderful concerts and working with world-class artists, but then to also have the experience of working with one of the greatest orchestras in the world, the Chicago Symphony. It's also the place that my family loves to come and spend so many summer nights. My wife and I bring our 2 boys here, and we spend so many hours sitting out on this lawn. It's one of our favorite things to do in the summer.
I've grown up with Ravinia meaning a lot to me as a kid from Chicago. Everybody here at Ravinia treats us so beautifully and with such respect.
One of the really neat things about Ravinia is that we have our own music conservatory where we bring students from all over the world in, and they have a very intensive study program with all of our own performing artists. And so they're not only learning about music, but they're getting to actually perform in a lot of the different venues here on our Ravinia campus as well.
Young people are really invited to be a part of Ravinia and to participate in Ravinia in all these different cool ways. I think that's what gives Ravinia its best quality.
It's a place where music grows, not only music, but friendships and a huge community.
We serve over 85,000 students a year in the Chicagoland area.
Working at Ravinia has been life-changing. It's a music festival that has been a home also to the children of Chicago.
The way Ravinia encourages us to listen to all sorts of genres of music. It's a wonderful way to get exposed to new ideas, new forms of art, and just to be immersed in culture.
Bernstein is one of the ultimate music educators, and most people think of him, of course, as the conductor and the pianist and the composer. But what he did for music education was he put it on a much larger scale, particularly with his young people's concerts. To make classical music approachable and accessible to an audience was revolutionary at the time. And I think it really started a trend in music education, helping the entire society understand that classical music is not dead.
My father was a teacher in everything that he did.
The creative arts are the beating heart of our civilization.
He saw the creative act as a way to change the world.
He felt an enormous obligation as an artist to be a model citizen and to use his art to reach people on that level.
Music is an essential part of just being a human, right? Being alive and this human experience. And I think that Bernstein really set things up for that beautifully.
We empathize through music, and we feel everyone's pain and sorrow. We're able to communicate that.
Bernstein was the model of the artist citizen. I don't know anyone that cared as much about reaching young people and bringing people together and about activism. I believe with all of my heart that music and art can actually change people's lives. And it is our duty as artists to reflect the times that we live in and to ask the right questions and to try to bring people together.
Music names the unnameable and communicates what we can't know.
When we use the term educator, it always sounds dry and sort of professorial and a classroom and chalkboard and all that kind of thing. That's not what he was at all. He was a brilliant interpreter, and he understood how to talk to people so that they would get excited about it as well. Leonard Bernstein was castigated and ridiculed and denigrated for mixing genres and liking rock and roll and liking pop music and liking tonality in the 60s and 50s when that was such a negative thing. But that melding of those genres has now found its time. The great futurist, Leonard Bernstein.
We have a special responsibility to the arts, for art is the great democrat, calling forth creative genius from every sector of society, disregarding race or religion or wealth or color.
We're so fortunate to have Mass. It was commissioned in 1971 by Jackie Kennedy during a dark political time of our history.
When Bernstein was asked to write a piece for the opening of the Kennedy Center, he thought, okay, what is singular to JFK? And the fact that Kennedy was the only Roman Catholic president came up into his mind. And he said, okay, I'm going to use the Mass, really the iconic representation of Catholicism, to hang all of these ideas on and use it as a structure, a framework, and a journey. So it's not really a Mass per se, but he uses all the sections of the Mass, all the sort of implications of the offertory, the communion, the confession, uses all those in a way to tell his story. It's a piece filled with risk. It's a piece that challenges us. It's a piece that comes at us with arms wide open and also says, I'm going to make you think about the world you live in.
Let us pray.
My father had always, of course, been a champion of social justice, of peace. He put all of that into Mass. Also, he was a man of faith. He was very spiritual.
It's about something complicated. It's about a crisis of faith, my father's crisis of faith, but also America's crisis of faith. And it was, the early 1970s, we were still very much in the turbulence of the 1960s. And this is what the piece was born out of.
It was such a critical moment in the history of the United States, particularly because of the situation in Vietnam, because of the transition to civil rights and that whole movement. It was a hot moment in our history.
It's about fighting for things. We're constantly trying to figure out the answers of the world, of religion, of God, and it's all in the music.
Well, it's been really interesting coming to it sort of from the same perspective as Bernstein. I'm Jewish, not Catholic, so it's been fantastic to sort of hear my Catholic friends talk about their experience with Mass. And then on top of that, questioning, just like how Bernstein encourages us to do in the Mass. Since God created the world, questioning is not in any way anti-God. Bernstein was very spiritual in his way, and he encourages questioning through the Mass.
I think so much of Bernstein's work really is about the burden of empathy. And if you are an empath, you do see human emotion everywhere, and you do see conflict and crisis and understand how people are feeling. How do you take that on and try to make a difference? And that's so much of the celebrant's journey, the lead character in Bernstein's Mass. He is taking on everybody's pain, everyone's heartache, everyone's anger, and trying to offer some kind of solution.
I play a migrant woman. She has a daughter here with her, and her husband and son have been held at the border. My character is asking for God to hurry and give her the answers. She has a lot of faith, she has a lot of hope, and it's just that holding on to hope and fighting through to find an answer, which we know is never given, and that's life.
I am playing a version of myself that comes as a man from the Arab world, but I'm coming into church not as a religious person, but as someone who loves the music and is looking for community and looking for people who will accept me, because the perception of people who look like me is not so favorable.
Because it speaks so many languages musically, it covers rock and roll and gospel and blues and symphonic work. It actually has the potential to reach everybody. Anyone who likes music can find something here that moves them. And I think Bernstein putting all of these things together really represents this country as a whole. I mean, of course, there's worldwide appeal to it, but it really does bring so many disparate voices together, and I think it has the power to really heal. I think Bernstein was also trying, with the Mass, to create a new kind of art form that was really fusing opera and musical theater and symphonic work and rock and roll. I know of no other piece that I've ever encountered that tries to do all of that at once and succeeds as brilliantly as Mass does.
I actually remember quite a lot of the writing process of when my dad was writing the piece. He was in a very intense mood. He would come down to dinner late and he'd be preoccupied. And then he would go into these monologues, like he'd be staring at the wine glass and he'd say, "Red wine isn't red at all. See how it's sort of brown and blue?
Red wine isn't red at all.
And I don't know whether he'd already written that.
It's sort of brown and blue.
But I remember that moment very specifically.
And the opening, of course, was nuts. So much publicity and excitement.
It's hard to convey how crazy the whole thing was. You know, it was the opening of the Kennedy Center, and it was in Washington, D.C., and all the dignitaries were there, and then the government brass, and so the whole thing was already mega, and you know, everybody was so gussied up, and the building was opening, and the piece was premiering. It was all very uncomfortable and nervous-making.
Mass, I think, is the ultimate moralistic story for Bernstein. This is the story about tolerance, about questioning, about belief, about love, about unity, about brotherhood, about humankind. I think it's one of the most beautiful stories ever told, and it feels more relevant today than in 1971 when it was premiered and people really didn't know what to make of it. Because today we have an eclecticism about our music that is all embracing. So you can have some jazz and you can have some rock and you can have some 12-tone music, and it all makes sense, you know, today. I think at the time people freaked out. Mass has been a very important piece for me throughout my career. Doing it at Ravinia has been very, very special because of the executive director, Wells Kaufman, and his artistic vision. The way he looks at Leonard Bernstein is so similar to the way I look at Bernstein. Bernstein is much more than conductor, composer, and personality. He's really representative, I think, of hope and optimism. And the team that we have assembled here, putting Mass together, is really my dream team. our director, Kevin Newberry, our choreographer, Melissa Mann, my music supervisor, Leslie Stifelman. These people understand this piece.
I honestly believe that something serendipitous happened to bring the exact right people to the exact right place at the right time to tell this story.
God said, let there be light.
We have a group of artists that come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and rather to present a real, compelling portrait of what America looks like, or what it should look like.
And it was good, brother. And it was good, brother.
Jamie Bernstein always says that Mass is the most like her father. It's the most personal story. And I'd like to think that it is our most personal story. And that's how it's all connected to him and connected through us. So when we sing the final Almighty Father, we are really of one community. It takes a good, strong hour and 40 minutes to get there, but at the end, we're really all of one voice.
I was a little afraid, I have to confess, because I have never done anything like it before. It was definitely a big challenge, if not the biggest challenge of my life.
I love a big dance musical as much as any choreographer. But for this one, story is really what drives the piece. And because there's such a huge variety of types of music that are involved, it gives me the opportunity to have a palette that really shifts and changes throughout the evening. But at its very base, I want to make sure that every actor that's on the stage, every human that's on the stage really moves in the way that is authentic to them. So while they sing and dance, for me in this piece, it's not really about choreography so much as it is about them communicating through their bodies the story that they're trying to tell. And sometimes that moves them to song, and sometimes that moves them to explosive dance. And there are a few moments of refined, really beautiful, traditional, like a little blip of a pas de deux. But for the most part, it feels pedestrian and real, and like anybody in this audience could jump out of their seat and participate, because it should be so rooted in their reality.
Bernstein loved working with kids. He loved sharing his passion about music, and I think he saw the potential in every child to change the world, to be a genius, to be a hero. And I think every child involved in this production feels that he or she is really the hero. I think that there's something about the way these kids are connecting with the piece that will stay with them for their entire lives.
We're blessed with this amazing Chicago Children's Choir.
We believe that we are creating global citizens and future leaders through the power of music. And I work with children across all 57 zip codes in Chicago.
Many of these kids have had and continue to have very rough lives.
So there's a part in Mass where they read from letters. It's a normal part of the Catholic liturgy, and Kevin Newberry, the director, came up with this fantastic idea in which he invited members of the street chorus to contribute their own letters that speak to issues that we feel passionate about today or that make us feel in some way imprisoned. And so that lends this production an extra quality of immediacy that I think is very powerful.
So when we started talking about putting our own letters from Mass together, that key part of the whole piece, we had these kids write letters of their own. We simply said, you know, what are you thinking about today? When you get up in the morning, what bothers you? What excites you? And it was a fascinating project to do.
The students love the Mass, I think, because of its eclecticism. It speaks directly to all of the different things that they hear on YouTube and online today. There's gospel music, there's rock music, there's choral music, there's a marching band. There's so many aspects to it. and it changes styles so quickly. So I think it actually, in some ways, it's easier for this generation that has all this music at their fingertips to appreciate it maybe more so than generations when it was actually written in the early 70s.
We need to give back to future generations. We need to pave the way. We need to save our world for the next generations. We need to leave things better for the kids coming along. And this is a message that we really, really, really need to heed today.
It's a pretty emotional journey because it is based in a lot of reality.
These days, luckily we can talk about things. We are free to talk about anything that we want. But that doesn't erase and doesn't mean that the subjects are resolved.
We brought the history, we brought something fresh. We turned this into something old but new. And I really feel in my heart that Bernstein would have maybe thought this was pretty cool.
Ravinia to me is courageous. Ravinia to me is not a place resting on its laurels, it's always looking forward. I entered into a journey with my board of directors and the entire Ravinia family, which encompasses about 400 volunteers, to talk about what it meant to try to create a new classical music audience for the world and how we could do it and what we were uniquely poised to do. Let's not try to do what they do downtown or Carnegie Hall or in Europe or in LA or in Houston. What can we do up here on the North Shore with this beautiful place that is open in the summertime and has marvelous structures, and how would we go about doing that? That journey has led us to the creation of the Ravinia Music Box Experience Center, a place that we hope people will have a impactful, compact, intimate experience with classical music in a variety of ways, especially things that are relevant to kids and families today. Let's take some chances with what we've been offered and the opportunities that we have.